This one sentence pretty much sets the stage for everything we're about to talk about. It tells us that our real power in the spiritual realm isn't first decided by how loud our prayers are, but by the posture of our hearts. You see, the loudest battles are almost always decided by the quietest victories.
So, let's explore this quieter war within. The material we're looking at makes this powerful point. Heaven has a completely different way of measuring a fight. It's not about the noise and the chaos, it's about our character, the very nature of our spirit.
And that brings us to this core idea, attitude warfare. This is the real front line. It's the daily fight against our own pride, against any hint of deceit, against unbelief. And what's so wild is who this message is for. When Jesus said you have to become like a child to enter the kingdom, he wasn't talking to outsiders. Get this, he was talking to his own apostles, the guys doing miracles. This is a message for believers.
Okay, this is where it gets really challenging for a lot of us, because it forces us to completely redefine what we think are the biggest spiritual threats. See, what heaven sees as truly dangerous is often the total opposite of what we see.
So, on one side, you have the things we see as the big, scary, dramatic sins. But from heaven's point of view, the really deadly enemies are the internal ones. Now, why is that? It's because pride, deceit, and unbelief aren't just things you do. They're the actual nature of the enemy. They poison our own spirit, making it impossible to reflect God's character, which is the only real source of any spiritual authority we have. So here's the bottom line. You cannot fight an enemy whose nature you share.
And that leads us to this incredible metaphor, our spiritual clothing. I mean, in any war, right, your uniform tells everyone which side you're on. Well, in the spiritual realm, your attitude is your uniform. It broadcasts to everyone, heaven and hell, who you're really fighting for.
So, the question is, what are you wearing? Hell's camouflage is made of pride, deceit, and unbelief. When you wear that, the enemy can operate freely because, well, you're dressed just like him. But heaven's uniform, that's made of light and armor, humility, honesty, and faith. This isn't just about looking good, it's a declaration of your identity and your allegiance.
And this quote just hits it home perfectly. Think of this as a spiritual law of physics. It's non-negotiable. You have zero authority over an enemy that you're secretly entertaining or starting to look like. Your internal allegiance completely cancels out your external authority.
It's just impossible. Trying to rebuke pride while you're secretly holding on to it, that's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. You don't defeat it, you just fuel it.
And you can't fight deceit with pretense. You just can't. If your life isn't built on a foundation of total honesty, you have no ground to stand on against lies. The only weapon that actually works is raw, unvarnished truth.
And listen, you can't overcome unbelief with just emotion. Hype and passion are not the same thing as faith. Real victory comes from a deep, settled conviction in your soul, not just a temporary feeling that comes and goes.
So what does all this mean for us, practically? How does this internal war actually affect our day-to-day spiritual life? Well, it directly impacts our communication with heaven. The gateways, they're opened and closed from the inside.
The cause and effect here is so direct you can't avoid it. When dishonesty slips in, the light just dims. When humility walks out the door, it's like heaven seals itself off. And when we speak from a place of unbelief, our prayers just stall. They hit a ceiling. We're literally creating our own blockages.
But here is the really good news. The opposite is just as true. The second we choose honesty again, grace starts to flow. The instant we bow in genuine humility, bam, access is granted. And when we finally speak from a place of true faith, mountains, those impossible situations, they actually start to move.
And that brings us to the final, most important point. The road to becoming an overcomer. It starts with a mirror, not a telescope. The very first victory you have to win is the one over your own internal nature.
What a powerful picture that paints. The enemy doesn't just kick down the door, no. He looks for an access point, a ladder that we left out for him. And our pride, our ego, our self-reliance, that is the ladder he uses to climb right into our lives. So, what's the solution? It's simple. We have to tear down the ladder.
So how do we dress for this battle? It's beautifully simple. You put on honesty and suddenly lies can't wrap themselves around you anymore. You put on humility and any throne you've built for yourself just crumbles. And you put on faith, and it becomes a light so bright that no shadow of fear can even exist near you.
And make no mistake, these are not just nice virtues or little self-help tips. Honesty, humility, and faith are your spiritual ID tags. They're how heaven's army recognizes you as one of its own. Without them, you're essentially invisible to your own side in the middle of a war.
And so we end with a question for me, a question for you. Before we look out at all the battles raging around us, we have to look inward. Before we decide to pray louder, we have to check our hearts. Am I wearing heaven's uniform? Am I actually dressed for victory?
Because ultimately this is the promise. The battle for a pure heart, for honesty, for humility, for faith, it is the single most important war you will ever fight. Because winning that war doesn't just bring you victory over darkness, it brings you face to face with God Himself.